Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is TJ, and welcome to another edition of the TJ Knows Wrestling Podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. This is the podcast that focuses on some of the greatest names in professional wrestling. And on today's episode, we're going to be talking about a legendary wrestler. I'm talking about the late, great Owen Hart. Those that know who Owen Hart is, he is the brother of Bret the Hitman Hart, and he is part of the legendary Hart family. We know a lot of things about Owen Hart. Definitely was one of the best wrestlers in the world during the time when he was alive. But unfortunately, we know about his tragic death back in 1999. But we're gonna focus on on Owen Hart today. Excuse me, and tell you a little bit about Owen Hart. Owen Hart was born Owen James Hart on May 7th of 1965 in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. And once again, we know Calgary, Alberta, Canada is the place where the famous Hart family is from. We know about the Hart Dungeon. A lot of the most well-renowned wrestlers, some of the most famous wrestlers in the world, came through the Hart Dungeon. Wrestlers like Chris Jericho, Chris Benoit, and all of the Hart brothers. Owen Hart was the youngest of the Hart clan. They had 12 children. He was the youngest. He was the baby. And he was the one that Bret would say that would get away with murder because he was the apple of his mother's eye. Okay. And it always seems that way, right? Like always the youngest child always seems to get away with a lot of things. I guess that's because, parents around the time when they start having 3 and 4 kids, or in this case, 11 kids, I mean, it's like, well, whatever. All right. So he was a guy who followed in the footsteps of his older brothers, man. He wanted to pursue professional wrestling. He ended up wrestling in his father, Stu Hart's famous territory in Stampede Wrestling. And he also wrestled in Japan. So he was kind of working with his father's company and moonlighting as a New Japan pro wrestler. All right. But then back in 1988, he got a phone call from WWF, and he got an opportunity to go to the WWF. And the first stint, he came as a guy who was a masked wrestler by the name of the Blue Blazer. Okay. And, it wasn't really a household name. Nobody really knew anything about him. I think the WWF at this time were trying to make sure that they kind of keep him away from Bret the Hitman Hart. So they didn't really acknowledge those two as brothers. And like I said, he wrestled under a mask. And it was mostly like kind of job work. Win some, you lose some. You go up against some of the top tier competition in the world of professional wrestling, take that L, take it as a learning experience. So he ends up leaving once again, and he goes to Japan. He wrestles in Japan, and he was wrestling under the Blue Blazer moniker there as well as being himself, Owen Hart. And then from there, he went to WCW, believe it or not. That was a shock to me. I didn't remember him in WCW, but he wrestled a handful of matches in WCW. He was supposed to sign a contract with WCW, but he didn't want to move his family from Canada to Atlanta. But for those that follow WCW, it's more of the Southern Territory. It's based in Atlanta because, that's where Ted Turner is from. Ted Turner owned the Braves, on CNN, and that's where their headquarters was. And he didn't want to make that type of commitment. So he ended up going back to the WWF back in 1991. Okay. And with that, he was with Bret the Hitman Hart this time. They acknowledged him as the brother of Bret the Hitman Hart, and he tagged alongside his brother-in-law, Jim the Anvil Neidhart, and they became the New Foundation. But then Bret the Hitman Hart, because of, the whole, Hulk Hogan leaving and Vince McMahon wanted to go in a different direction instead of paying attention to the larger-than-life, say your prayers, eat your vitamins type wrestlers. He wanted to transition to wrestlers that were mostly focused on the work rate, the hard-working wrestlers, the catches can type wrestlers. And Bret the Hitman Hart fit that mold, so he decided to make Bret the Hitman Hart a singles competitor, which left Jim the Anvil Neidhart and Owen Hart as a tag team. And they were still going as the New Foundation until Jim the Anvil Neidhart had some issues with steroids. He ended up leaving WWF, and that left Owen Hart to be by himself. But instead of Vince McMahon putting Owen Hart by himself, he decided to put him with Coco Beware. I mean, believe it or not. And they became the tag team called High Energy. High Energy, I can remember this tag team, man, because they used to wear these checkerboard suspenders and these big hammer parachute pants, and totally 90s, man. I mean, honestly, that if you want to find something that embodied the 90s, look no further than High Energy. But they were a tag team for a while, but I guess Vince McMahon realized that wasn't working. Okay, it wasn't working. It wasn't helping. It sucked, you know. So he decided to separate Coco and Owen Hart. But this time, he decided to put Owen Hart as a single competitor. And around this time, when he did become a singles competitor, you had Bret the Hitman Hart, his brother, who was becoming a household name and one of the faces of WWF. And he found himself in a corner of Bret the Hitman Hart and some of Bret the Hitman Hart matches with Jerry the King Lawler. Jerry the King Lawler, who was the king of Memphis. Some of you probably know, if you're old enough, Jerry the King Lawler owned Mid-South Wrestling that was based out of Memphis. And he signed a contract with WWF, and the first person he feuded with was Bret the Hitman Hart. So Owen Hart would be in a corner of Bret Hart. And in the process between this feud, he and Bret the Hitman Hart became a tag team around 93, 94, right? So they ended up becoming a tag team. And at the Royal Rumble in 1994, they were challenging the Quebecers, a Canadian tag team. You probably know Jaku Joe, also known as the Mountie. He had a tag team partner. You know, they were the Quebecers. They were the tag team champions. They took on Owen and Bret the Hitman Hart. And Bret ended up hurting his knee in the match. And instead of him tagging Owen in order for Owen to try to take over the match because Bret was hurt, Bret decided to go hard and finish the match. But it got so bad that he couldn't continue the match. So the referee ended up canceling the match because Bret couldn't go any further. Owen, in frustration, ended up kicking the leg from under his leg. Okay, in the words of Owen Hart. And Owen Hart ended up turning into a bad guy. And Bret the Hitman Hart ended up at the end of the night winning the Royal Rumble, him and Lex Luger. He ended up going to WrestleMania 10 to take on Yokozuna. But before he took on Yokozuna, he ended up having a match with Owen Hart because Owen Hart wanted to fight Bret the Hitman Hart. Bret reluctantly wanted to fight his brother, said he loved him, but Owen was just doing all type of underhanded, backhanded things to try to make sure that Bret fought him. And they opened up WrestleMania 10 in one of the best matches that you're ever going to see. I encourage anybody that has the WWE Network to check out Bret versus Owen Hart, WrestleMania 10. Owen Hart actually beats Bret the Hitman Hart in that match. He beats him, okay? So Bret, even though he went on at the end of the night, ended up becoming the WWF champion, Owen Hart still was upset. You know what I'm saying? He wanted to prove to his entire family, this was the storyline, that he was on Bret's level, right? So their feud ended up, being very, very intense, going all the way to SummerSlam in a classic steel cage match, which I feel like is also one of the best matches that you're ever going to see. Bret versus Owen for the WWF Championship inside of a steel cage. I mean, Vince McMahon, WWF did an outstanding job putting the Hart family inside of the crowd and had the family, interviewed and talk about who you want to win and this, that, and the third. You had Jim the Anvil Neidhart came back from WCW, back in WWF. He was a guy that was in a corner of Owen Hart. And I can remember this as a kid because I can remember wanting to see Owen Hart win this match. Like, I was dead serious, man. Like, I was a huge Owen Hart fan. And I still to this day watch Owen Hart's entrance going into that match at SummerSlam because that's when he actually brought his brand new theme song, man, which I still like to this day, man. He came out there, he had the goggles on, you know what I'm saying, like Bret the Hitman Hart had. I mean, he was out there calling himself the King of Hearts because he ended up winning the King of the Ring at you know what I'm saying, during 1994. I mean, he was on cloud nine, man. You know what I'm saying? And they wrestled probably like around 30 minutes. A classic match, man. I mean, perfect. I mean, this is a virtuoso. You know what I'm saying? Like, you didn't really see any bumps. And even though they were in a cage, it wasn't brutal as you would see most cage matches, but it was just a perfect match, man. Bret the Hitman Hart ended up winning because Owen ended up getting his legs stuck in the cage. He was on his way down. He get his legs stuck in the cage. Bret hits the ground, ends up regaining the WWF Championship. But me as a kid, man, a part of me wanted Owen Hart to win the WWF Championship. We're going to talk a little bit more about that later in detail. But in the process, you know what I'm saying, Owen Hart still continued his heel run. You know what I'm saying? He won a couple Slammy awards along the way. I know some of you probably remember Owen Hart coming down to the ring with the Slammies in his hand. He won 2 Slammies. As you can see behind me, he used to come down there. Intercontinental Championship. He won the Intercontinental Championship. Also, you know what I'm saying, along the way a couple times. I think a lot of people remember his classic Intercontinental Championship match versus Stone Cold Steve Austin. We know that's the match that actually shortened the career of Stone Cold Steve Austin. He ends up turning Stone Cold Steve Austin almost in a, well, not almost, in a tombstone power driver position, but instead of him going down to his knees, he dropped Stone Cold Steve Austin, you know what I'm saying, flat down on the mat. Instead of him going down to his knees, he dropped on his butt. I mean, he just basically planted Stone Cold Steve Austin. Stone Cold Steve Austin will tell you to this day, you know what I'm saying, he suffered temporary paralysis in that match. Stone Cold Steve Austin ended up winning the Intercontinental Championship because, he did it with one of the worst roll-ups in history, but he did what he could. He won the Intercontinental Championship, but that is one of the main reasons why Stone Cold Steve Austin's career was shortened, because of Owen Hart. Wasn't Owen Hart's best moment. Stone Cold Steve Austin, you can tell he still has a level of resentment towards Owen Hart because of that, because the fact is, after the match, Stone Cold, so confused, didn't know where his career was going to go after this. I mean, really nervous about if he's going to have a career. Owen Hart never called Stone Cold Steve Austin, never apologized to him, never said my mistake or anything like that, didn't check on him or nothing. And, a lot of people feel like that Owen Hart should have called him. Even Bret the Hitman Hart would tell you that he should have called Stone Cold Steve Austin, which I feel like he should have, man. I understand that you're probably upset. You're probably a little nervous. You could have possibly paralyzed the guy, but it's only right for you to make that call. Also in the process, he won some tag team championships. He won with his brother-in-law, the British Bulldog, Davey Boy Smith. They tagged for a while. And he also won with Yokozuna. Yokozuna, this was during the time with Yoko. And I encourage everybody to check out the Yokozuna documentary. But Yokozuna was gaining weight. You know what I'm saying? He ballooned up to nearly 600 pounds, if not 600 pounds. And the WWF decided to put him with Owen Hart in order for him to kind of, chill on the outside and come in and spurts, okay? But he won a tag team champion with Yokozuna and also with the British Bulldog, Davey Boy Smith. And then we fast forward a little further. Owen Hart joined the Nation of Domination. He was known as the Black Heart. And I see somebody in the chat, Sanchez, saying, I am not a nugget, because that was his thing. The crowd would call him a nugget, okay? And he would say, I am not a nugget, I'm a Black Heart. But he was known as the Black Heart, Owen Hart. And, I really didn't like him when he was in the Nation. He didn't fit. I mean, we all know what the Nation was, man. Nation was the militant group, you know what I'm saying, mostly African-American guys, and Owen Hart stuck out, you know what I'm saying, like a lime glove, if you will. Okay. But nevertheless, I mean, he brought a lot of veteran leadership to the Nation. He was the co-leader of the Nation alongside Farouk and, not Farouk, The Rock, excuse me. And he had some good moments, man. But I think the best thing about that whole feud was when DX got the guy to mimic Owen Hart. He sounded just like him. It was extremely funny. I encourage anybody to check that out. Great promo right there. But when The Rock was the the leader of the nation. The nation was going hard against DX. But then you find yourself with Owen Hart. His career was a little bit in limbo during this time. It was, him by himself. Bret the Hitman Hart was gone. He went to WCW because of the Montreal screw job, which I'm pretty sure we're going to be talking about later on down the line. Bret Hart leaves on some bad circumstances. Owen Hart decides to stay, and his career was basically in limbo. So Vince McMahon decides to, turn back the clock and put Owen Hart back into the Blue Blazer gimmick, right? And we know the Blue Blazer, he would come down with a superhero-like entrance. He would be attached to a bungee cord, and he would be lowered down into the ring. And for those that don't know, I mean, during the 90s, everybody was coming down on bungee cords. I mean, that was kind of the thing. We remember Shawn Michaels, WrestleMania 12, coming down from the rafters, right? You know what I'm saying, attached to cables. We remember Sting, right? They would put Sting, you know what I'm saying, on cables. Sting would get lowered down to the ring. And, you know what I'm saying, and he would come in and attack the NWO. So attaching wrestlers to bungee cables was kind of the thing. So Owen Hart in 1999 was supposed to wrestle the Godfather for the Intercontinental Championship. And he was supposed to have a superhero-like entrance. He was supposed to be attached to this cable. It was supposed to slowly lower him down to the ring while his vignette was playing, you know what I'm saying, to hype up the match. But in the process, when they attached the cable and when the vignette was playing, Owen Hart released himself a little bit too early. He falls about 50 feet. His head hits the turnbuckle, neck snapped back, and in Kansas City, Missouri, died in front of thousands of people. He died in front of thousands of people. And you hear Jim Ross and you know what I'm saying, trying to basically ad-lib because, nobody really knows what to say. Jerry the King Lawler leaves the commentary booth, goes into the ring, and you see Jerry the King Lawler comes back, pale face, in shock, and just looks at Jim Ross and said, no, it's not good. But you would think that, WWF, you have a wrestler that dies in the ring. You would think that you would cancel the match. You think you would cancel the event altogether. But they decided to go ahead and have the event, which is still looked at as one of the most disrespectful things in wrestling history. At the end of the night, Jim Ross comes and tells us that Owen Hart died because of the tragic event. The next night, on Monday Night Raw, they have a tribute show to Owen Hart. Wrestlers pour their hearts out, talk about how Owen Hart meant the world to him. He was one of the nicest guys in professional wrestling. Just made it even worse. I mean, it was a terrible ordeal, but it made it even worse that you're hearing these things about him. And Owen Hart loses his life tragically in a bungee accident. To this day, Owen Hart can't really be mentioned on WWF television. His wife, the wife of Owen Hart, ends up suing. She ends up suing WWF for damages, right? Well, yeah, Martha Hart. You know what I'm saying? Martha Hart. That's his wife. I'm sorry. Yes, that's her name, Martha Hart. Martha Hart ends up suing the WWF for damages. Ends up winning. To this day, she refuses to release any copyrights about Owen Hart to the WWF. And as a fan, I feel bad about that, but I understand, right? I think we understand that his wife is really frustrated. She felt like it was unnecessary, which it was. But as a fan, I just wish that we can actually, I'm a huge video game guy. I would love to play a video game that had Owen Hart in it. I would love to see Owen Hart get inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame. I would love to see Owen Hart recognized more than what he actually is. But like I said, I understand. So When I think about Owen Hart, I think about one of the most athletically gifted members of the Hart family. Like Bret was an extremely talented technical wrestler, but I feel like Owen was the best athlete of all the Hart kids. I feel like he was the best athlete. He can go down in history as one of the greatest wrestlers to never win the WWF Championship, which I mentioned that he battled for the WWF Championship, but he never won. He never won the WWF Championship when he was alive. And it's sad because I feel like eventually he probably would have ended up winning the WWF Championship, but it's just awful that he never got the opportunity to do so. He was also a guy that helped people like Chris Jericho, helped people like Chris Benoit. You know what I'm saying? Like those guys that were like on the smaller side, gave them an opportunity and showed them that those type of guys can be main event players, because Owen Hart was probably around 219, 220, and he was really doing his best work during a time where, you know, those smaller wrestlers wasn't getting that much shine. So he would definitely go down in history once again as one of the best wrestlers to never win a WWF Championship, one of the best heels that WWF ever had, and put on some of the most solid matches that you can possibly think of. And not to mention, like, no matter if a guy is in limbo or not, you tag him up with Owen Hart, he just automatically just legitimized whoever he's with. He made any situation that he was in, he made it work. So many people around WWF and former wrestlers would tell you that they loved him. They loved him that he was a jokester. He was a guy that would call Vince McMahon on the phone and act as if, you know what I'm saying, he's a, you know what I'm saying, a pizza delivery guy, you know what I'm saying, that delivering about 50 pizzas. He would call his wife and act like he's Vince McMahon, or, you know what I'm saying, he would do like different crazy hijinks inside of the locker room. You know, like everybody loved Owen Hart. A guy at the age of 34 years old lost his life, died way too soon, with so much to offer. And just like I mentioned in on previous episodes about wrestlers, he's a guy that I feel like would contribute to the world of professional wrestling to this day. I can see him possibly training. I can see him coming back, probably doing some things, you know what I'm saying, that try to help and, you know, advance some of the talent out there. It's so unfortunate that the world lost Owen Hart, but as a kid, I can just remember rooting for Owen Hart because I thought he was probably the coolest wrestler that I ever seen, being a 10 or 11-year-old kid sitting on the living room floor watching him. But that's my thoughts on Owen Hart. I'm going to go ahead and read some of your comments here. We're going to start with Jerry. Jerry says he remembers that. He remembers Bret versus Owen. That was a classic match. That was a classic match, man. That's one of those matches that I think that everybody needs to check it out if you're a wrestling fan. I used to like Ric Flair when he used to dance in the ring. Yeah, Ric Flair, definitely greatest of all time, one of the best entertainers. Work rate was off the charts. Ric Flair during the territorial days would wrestle some of those classic 60-minute matches, and, you know, Ric Flair is definitely one of the all-time greats. Vince was good back then. Yeah, Vince was good because Vince had some competition. These days, Vince is like kind of just phoning it in because he feels like he's the only game in town. John Bradshaw Layfield made my all-time favorite heel. Yeah, JBL is like one of those guys that people don't give that type of appreciation to because maybe they just feel like he wasn't that good in the ring. But, you know, for like a brand that they were trying to build at the time, SmackDown, JBL was that guy. You know what I'm saying? That kind of, you know, they put in the forefront to be that heel, and he did a good job. You know, he did a good job. He carried the torch until WWE found John Cena. You know, so, and John Cena beat him at WrestleMania 21 for the title, and the rest is history. Yes, that was a big loss that night. Vince got a lot of heat for that. Yeah, he definitely got a lot of heat, and he deserved it. Like, I think they should have canceled it. Nowhere in the world would they do that these days. The event would be over. But I mean, it was the first of its kind. Yeah, it was the first of its kind. So I mean, you kind of stuck. Like, you got a arena full of folks, and You know, somebody just tragically dies in the ring. Like, what do you do? What many don't remember is that Owen Hart thing happened just about a month after the very first mass shooting in America, Columbine. Yeah, that was awful, man. You know, out there in Colorado. Uh, yeah, I mean, it was just one tragedy after another back in those days. Sad stuff, man. Sad stuff to see such a great wrestler lose his life, and it was just totally unnecessary. You didn't even have to do that. Man, that was something to see at 12 years old. You know, CT, you know, the world that we live in today, you probably would have had Owen Hart dying at about 20 different angles, right? But there's only like one video camera that probably caught that. And that's probably, you know, in WWF possession. You know, you couldn't bring like a camcorder or anything like that to a wrestling event back in the day. You know, they wouldn't allow you to do so. So can you imagine if they had camera phones? You know, so that kind of saves WWF because you know we live in a world of transparency. Like everybody wants to see what happened, right? If you don't see what happened, it never happens. So because you know people didn't have camera phones and the fact that people didn't have like no visual, it kind of helps WWF because it's almost like he said, she said, so you can kind of control the traffic of that, which is fortunate for them. Thoughts on Edge versus Roman for the Universal title at WrestleMania, Spear versus Spear. Hunter, I was not surprised by that. Edge versus Roman. I mean, it's a different dynamic. Never seen that match before. Uh, Gives Roman more heat because he's going up against a guy who had a career-ending neck surgery. Makes him look more like a prick if he's like out there beating him up or you know what I'm saying, attacking him. And Edge going up against a guy who's white hot. Like Roman to me is the best wrestler in wrestling right now, the best heel. Okay, now if you're talking about catches can, you're talking about wrestling prowess, then okay, maybe somebody else. But when we're talking about a guy who is just out there at the forefront, overall work, Roman Reigns is the best in wrestling right now. And you know, it seems like Edge don't have a chance. When you have people like you tapping Braun Strowman out and you're beating up Kevin Owens and I mean everybody that you touch, you basically beating them, you know, pretty bad. I mean, the fact that you even beat up your own cousin to be the champion. I mean, it makes Roman looks like this unstoppable heel. So if Edge was to beat him, it would mean more. But we'll see. It makes more sense to me. Hey TJ, where would you rank the Usos in tag team division all time? Well, I don't think they're the greatest tag team of all time, but I think they're one of the greatest tag teams of the modern era. You know, I think that they do good work. I think that their work with the New Day I mean, a couple years ago when they had their feud, I think that's probably the best feud. I think those two teams elevated the tag team division. The only problem is there really isn't a tag team division. You know, Vince just kind of gets two guys together, and you might have a couple tag teams like the Street Profits and you know people like that. You know, what I'm saying that's been together, you know, since the beginning. But I mean, I think the Usos are one of the best tag teams in the modern era. If I was like ranking them among some of the greatest tag teams, they might be in the top 10 at 10. You know what I'm saying? But I don't see them as you know, like the greatest tag team of all time. They have some great tag teams out there. I mean, are you putting them before the Road Warriors? Probably not. Are you putting them before the Steiner Brothers? Probably not. Are you putting them before Demolition? Probably not. Are you putting them, you know, before the Midnight Express? Probably not. Are you putting them in front of the Rock and Roll Express? Probably not. You know what I'm saying? So, and you have to put like the New Day out there. You know what I'm saying? Like you know, like Fabulous Freebirds. I mean, you got some great tag teams, man. You know what I'm saying? Like Edge and Christian, the Hardy Boys, the Dudleys. Like, are you putting them before any of those guys? Probably not. So Drew McIntyre is right behind him. Yeah, Drew McIntyre is a really good champion, man. Like I gotta say, I'm not into like big swole cock diesel type dude, you know what I'm saying, walking down to the ring, ain't got no neck, you know what I'm saying, holding the championship. But I think that Roman Reigns and Drew McIntyre are probably the two most believable champions in wrestling right now. You know what I'm saying? No disrespect to Kenny Omega. He has great work rate. His matches with Okada are like, I mean, off the charts. But when it comes to like looking the part and being believable, like these two guys can kick somebody's ass. You know what I'm saying? It would be Roman Reigns and Drew McIntyre. Like, you know, I mean, Kenny Omega is a really good wrestler, but I mean, Kenny Omega is probably he's a wrestler. He's a nerd masquerading as a wrestler. Like, I get nerd vibes from Kenny Omega. Great wrestler, but don't really look like he would kick somebody's ass if you found him in the alley. Do you think there's a possibility Dean Ambrose, John Moxley returns to WWE? I think anything is possible, Hunter. I think anything is possible. I think that John Moxley is free to do what he loves to do. I mean, Tony Khan gives these guys great opportunities to thrive in AEW, right? He writes television, but at the same time, those guys are right there with him, helping him write for themselves. And I think when you don't have to worry about going out there saying all this corny material that WWE writers give you. You can collab with a person with your character. Why would you want to leave that? So I do feel like he's going to be with AEW for a while, but anything is possible. Anything is possible. There weren't camera phones in 1999. Absolutely. There definitely wasn't. But can you imagine if there were? The Dudley Boys are the greatest tag team ever. They're definitely up there. They're definitely up there. I wouldn't say they're the greatest tag team all the time. The greatest tag team to me are the Road Warriors. That's what I feel like are the greatest tag team all the time. The Road Warriors. Now, the Dudley Boys are up there. But to me, it's the LOD. It's the Legion of Doom. I'll be ripping them says, who will win if Ming went one-on-one against Haku? Well, since they're the same person, you know what I'm saying? So since they're the same person, I would have to say Ming would be Haku, okay, if they weren't the same person. Because Ming had that one hit a quitter, okay? For like Ming was super kick a person in the face and count a 1, 2, 3. Like he was like beating guys like that. So Ming wasn't no joke, okay? Haku wouldn't want to catch him at a bar because according to other wrestlers around, he's the toughest wrestler ever. Okay, so at a bar, I'll pick Haku. In the ring, I'm going with me. All right. Kenny Omega got a dangerous quick suplex. Yeah. I like that. I like that suplex. Yeah. And you gotta be very careful to perform that suplex, so you can break a guy's neck. Definitely. That wing suplex that he does, man. You definitely got to be careful with that. You can break a guy's neck, and you got to have some confidence in a guy. Let's see, Drew McIntyre and Roman Reigns run WWE right now. Yeah, basically. I mean, I don't think anybody's close to him. How do you think a match between Prince Albert and Lord Tensai would man. First off, I will roll with Prince Albert because Lord Tensai was trash. Okay. They were trying to build on that momentum that Matt Bloom, aka Sweet Pea, you know what I'm saying? AKA Prince Albert. They were trying to build off that momentum he had in Japan. And it just didn't pan out, man. Nobody knew or cared about Lord Tensai. And the fact that he was beating up his wrangler, his handler, whatever like that, I still wasn't feeling. So I would roll with Prince Albert. At least he had a decent run on SmackDown. Man, Chris Jericho is out of shape. Do you think it's time for him to hang it up, TJ? No. Chris Jericho is having fun at this point, man. And then at the same time, Chris Jericho, I mean, look, his best days are behind him, right? I mean, there's nothing Chris Jericho can do that is going to taint his legacy. The only person that probably believe that is Jim Cornette, you know what I'm saying, who making a lot of money. Him and Brian Last on the Jim Cornette experience. They making a lot of money off, you know, going at Chris Jericho. But I mean, there's nothing really he can do that can taint his legacy. He's already had classic matches. We already know he's one of the greatest wrestlers of all time. So what can he really do? Right now, he's just having fun. He's having fun collecting checks. I ain't got no problem with that. And, you know, just his name alone is going to legitimize these wrestlers that really nobody really know that much about, you know? So I ain't got no problem with that. I got Albert. What would happen in an I Quit match between Razor Ramon and Scott Hall? Well, Razor Ramon will win because Scott Hall will probably be too inebriated to have the match. So I'm gonna go with Razor on them. The Fiend Bray Wyatt. Yeah, the Fiend Bray Wyatt definitely coming back for WrestleMania against Randy Orton. One of the best gimmicks in wrestling right now. I don't care what anybody is saying. I just feel like people are just being way too hard on the Fiend. I just think that people want to reinvent the wheel, want him to be like the Undertaker type. But would it be organic if he was too much like the Undertaker? Probably not. Okay, so I like him a lot. I like the direction he's going in. I like some of the creativity. It's different, you know, different stroke for different folks. They be on Chris Jericho ass. They definitely be on his ass, you know. But like I said, they making money off of him. I love Jim Cornette podcast. He be cracking me up, TJ. He keep it 100. Yeah, Jim Cornette is hilarious, man. Like some of it, I just feel like is classic heel Jim Cornette. I feel like he's playing a character, and some parts I just feel like, you know, he's giving you his honest opinion. You know, Brian Last, I don't even know why he on the show. It just seems like he just on there to just talk negative, but it kind of wrangle, you know what I'm saying, like Jim Cornette in. But I like Jim Cornette. I can do without Brian Last. I mean, he just seems like he just goes out his way just to talk negative. It don't even be organic. It just seems like he just want to say something negative. Josh and Jesus says, if it was real fighting, Roman and the Usos would destroy everyone else. It's nearly impossible to beat a Samoan in a fight. Yeah, those Samoans are tough. They are tough. And when you hear anybody talk about wrestlers, they always talk about how tough the Samoans is. And that's one of the reasons why Vince always put those guys at the top and at the forefront, because those guys are really badass. You know what I'm saying? Like, so yeah, they definitely are tough customers, man. I would not want to fight any of those guys. Not to mention, man, like just watching like that Yokozuna documentary, like, I mean, Rikishi is the type of person, man. I mean, that's a person he has fell into the category of one of the people I would like to meet before I die. Like, just seemed like one of the realest, coolest, down to earth cats you ever seen in your life. And I respect that. That's the one that Vince got right, the Fiend Bray Wyatt. Yeah, definitely. Pat McAfee may be top 10 in the world right now. Yeah, Pat McAfee, yeah, he did pretty good, man, on NXT. And, you know, his match with Adam Cole, the whole Adam Cole coming on his show, walking off, you know what I'm saying? Like that was some good stuff right there. You know what I'm saying? Good stuff. And, you know, a little bit more training. This guy, I mean, he can already talk behind the mic. I mean, he got his own podcast, for God's sakes, but I mean, he can do some damage. He definitely can do that. What up, TJ? Greeting from Colombia, South America. Don't really know wrestling. Who that for life, here to support. Well, I appreciate that. You know, like, you don't have to know wrestling to be here. You know, this is really a show. Like, if you ever seen wrestling before in your life, I think you would like it. because I'm not really focusing on like tonight they had a show called SmackDown. All right, SmackDown wrestling show. Most people are probably reviewing it right now. Oh, I liked it. Oh, I hated it. Why they did this? Like, this show mostly focuses on I pick a wrestler each week and I talk about that particular wrestler. And if you ever seen wrestling before, most likely you probably seen these guys wrestle at one time or another. The shows I've done: Chris Benoit, Eddie Guerrero, Kurt Angle, Owen Hart, Bret Hart. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm pretty sure, and Hulk Hogan. You know what I'm saying? Like, so I'm pretty sure you probably heard of quite a few of those guys. So that's the way we doing it here. How big of a CM Punk fan were you growing up? Well, I was in my 20s around the time when CM Punk was popular in WWE. So I'm a CM Punk fan, but I'm not as big of a CM Punk fan as most people are. You know, I think CM Punk was good, but I think CM Punk was a victim of the social media experience. I just feel like when you go on social media, sometimes social media can kind of gas you up, if you will, and make you bigger and feel more important than what you actually are. And I just feel like maybe he was one of those people that probably seen the whispers and, oh, they need to give CM Punk a chance. And, he kind of just fell into that trap. But I mean, he was a good wrestler. He was a good talker on the mic. But he helped wrestling in a way where smaller guys got opportunities, but he didn't help wrestlers because now it's like every wrestler whines now when they don't get their way, right? Because CM Punk, oh, I deserve a championship. Oh, I've been putting in the work. And now it's like every single wrestler who doesn't get on television does the same thing he does. And it becomes watered down and makes you feel like they're just a bunch of whiners. And that part I didn't like. Giving opportunities to guys that have good work rates, good. Making people feel like they're better than what they actually are because 5,000 people on social media say you good. A few people, like, nah, I ain't for that. So I like them, but just wasn't one of my favorites of all time. Alpha and Seiko are the baddest, my guy. Yeah, the Wild Samoans. Yeah, they were pretty tough. Rikishi's Hill music is one of the best entrance songs. I'm a bad man. I'm a bad man. He can bad man, bad hooks. He got up thieves and crooks. Yeah, I remember that song. Bad rules. I'm making my own rules. I'm the bad man. Yeah, I liked it, man, but it was just weird to see him. He was the one that ran over Stone Cold Steve Austin. Rikishi is another tough one. Yeah, he definitely is. I gotta ask TJ, do you have a favorite wrestling game? My favorite wrestling game of all time has to be SmackDown versus Raw, the first one. SmackDown versus Raw, the first one, and also WrestleMania, the arcade game. And a timeless classic is WrestleMania, you know what I'm saying? Like the arcade game and Super WrestleMania, you know what I'm saying? Like those on the Super Nintendo game system. Can't knock that. Some of my favorites of all time. Your thoughts on RVD, one of my favorite wrestlers of all time. RVD definitely was one of my favorite wrestlers. During this time when I was a teenager, but I had a bad experience with Rob Van Dam, and maybe you know what I'm saying, it was my fault. But this was during the time I was 17 years old, and I was at a New Jersey airport. I was at the JFK airport, and I was headed back to New Orleans, and I guess SmackDown was traveling because I seen like all the SmackDown superstars in there. I seen Shelton Benjamin and Charlie Haas. I seen Rene Dupree. I seen the Dudley Boys, Rey Mysterio, and we were at this food court, and I seen Rob Van Dam, and he was sitting in the food court by himself eating some nachos. And I walked up to him and I asked him, I said, RVD, can I have your autograph? And he replied to me as like, I'm trying to eat, man. And I was like, okay, I'm sorry. So I walked off. Once he finished eating, he called me over and he gave me a card, right? I had my pen and I had my paper in hand and everything like that. But he gave me a card, and on the back of the card, he had his autograph. On the front of the card, it was him advertising his comic book store in San Francisco. And I just thought that, I don't know, man. I understand about the whole thing. You're trying to eat, and you're trying to, you want some time to yourself, but I mean, you could have easily just signed my autograph. I had the pen and the paper there, but besides that, I think RVD is extremely gifted. He was extremely talented. His ECW matches when he was the television champion were off the charts. And his match against John Cena at One Night Stand, one of my favorite matches, definitely like in my top 20 matches of all time. I remember WWF WrestleMania, the arcade game. That was good. SmackDown, Here Comes the Pain. That's a lot of people love that game. Remember Tecmo Wrestling TJAY? Nah, I really don't. I don't remember that. Believe it or not. SmackDown versus Raw 2007 was my favorite series. I love that series. Yeah, that was my one of my favorites right there. SmackDown versus Raw. My top 5 interesting songs. My Time by Triple H. Drew McIntyre first theme. Yeah, Broken Dreams. The Rock original one. No Chance by Vince McMahon, and Test Song. Test. Hunter says, could you see Carlito in the United States Championship picture soon? Look, I think Vince McMahon probably in love with Carlito, how big and how physically fit he is right now. I can see Carlito wrestling. I don't know to what extent, but I mean, I'm just in favor of keeping these older guys away from these mid-card championships. Okay, like give them to these guys that deserve it. You know what I'm saying? Like use these older guys as enhancement talent. I mean, Jeff Hardy going up against somebody like Mustafa Ali and losing not gonna help. Ain't not gonna destroy the legacy of Jeff Hardy. I mean, we know who Jeff Hardy is. We also know that he's 40. So, why are we sitting up here like pretending like this stuff is gonna hurt these guys' legacy? I hate to sound like a stan, but No Mercy is still goated. I think a lot of people are like that for the Nintendo 64. I think a lot of people like that. Good to see Carlito again. Yeah, he in some phenomenal shape, man. I'm like, man, Carlito made me want to go to the gym as soon as I saw him. Hey, TJ, I actually have a picture with Sheamus and Drew McIntyre, but I met Sheamus in the gym down here in New Orleans. Cool dude. Yeah, Damien, I actually met quite a few wrestlers in my lifetime. I remember when I was at Carver High School and the Dudley Boys and Christian came there. And I remember people talking to them about the LEAP test. Like, why would you be talking to professional wrestlers about standardized testing and cultural bias? I mean, most of those guys didn't even finish high school, but I digress. Like I said, I met RVD, I met Rene Dupree, I met Shelton Benjamin. Like I said, man, I mean, I met quite a few wrestlers in my day. Fact, I'm tired of seeing a washed up Goldberg every year. Yeah, man, I'm over that. And I just feel like Vince McMahon needs to give these guys opportunities, man. Let these young guys shine. And the reason why they not shining is because he don't give them opportunities. Like if Vince wants something to work, he's going to make it work. How many times did we want John Cena to go heel, right? But he just was adamant of making this guy a babyface. So Vince, if he really wants something to happen, he is going to make it happen. So I think anybody pretending, oh man, such and such just can't get over. Like Roman wasn't over. John Cena wasn't over. He forced them to be over by putting them in match after match, putting them against some of the elite wrestlers in wrestling. And he just forced it to work. So all this stuff about, oh, this guy not a star, this, that, and the third, like BS. Even Jeff Hardy, you know what I'm saying? Like Jeff Hardy couldn't talk on a mic. But they still made him a champion. So if Vince wants something to work, he'll let it work. TJ, who's the GOAT? What are you talking about? The greatest wrestler of all time? The greatest wrestler of all time, in my opinion, is Shawn Michaels and Ric Flair, right? My favorite wrestlers of all time is Eddie Guerrero, Kurt Angle, and it used to be Bret Hart until he just, I don't know, man. I'm just over Bret Hart. Bret Hart is the biggest whiner in wrestling history. Everything is always somebody else's fault. Bret Hart is such a miserable human being. Like just his personality and how much of a sourpuss he is, like just turns me off. Like I don't even like he just basically fell out my top 5, just him just whining alone. Like I put Ravishing Rick Rude up in that thing and Mr. Perfect Kurt Hennig. I'm a big fan of like people that I'm a big fan of technical wrestlers, like mad wrestlers, guys that can do with different styles. Used to be Bret Hart, but what a whiner. Like seriously, what a whiner. Alex Wright, all-time best interest and best day. Yeah, man, Alex Wright, man, the Wonder Kid. Yeah, man. That dance was legendary back in the day in WCW. Hey TJ, who is your top 5? I think I already mentioned it. Eddie Guerrero, Kurt Angle, Chris Benoit, Ravishing Rick Rude, and Mr. Perfect. I'm 6 feet, 220 pounds, and when I stand by them guys, they make me feel too small. Yeah, because those guys are more like 260, 270. Kurt Angle was a monster. Absolutely, man. Kurt Angle, one of the best of all times. The Rock, the GOAT. The Rock was the GOAT on the mic. The Rock was not really a good wrestler, right? I mean, I think he was solid. Put him in a ring. He was extremely athletic, extremely charismatic. But to say that he's like one of the greatest wrestlers of all time, I would have to say no. The Undertaker is the GOAT. It's just that simple. Greatest, he's the GOAT of gimmicks. He's the greatest gimmick of all time. Greatest wrestler of all time? Nah. He definitely has the greatest gimmick of all time. But I don't think he's better than Shawn Michaels or Ric Flair. And even Undertaker would tell you that. Shawn Michaels is the greatest in-ring performer in American wrestling history. Absolutely. Absolutely. Shawn Michaels is the greatest when it comes to like work rate, when it comes to charisma, when it comes to in-ring skills, when it comes to selling, when it comes to making other guys look good, when it comes to storytelling. Gets no better. Gets no better than a Heartbreak Kid, Shawn Michaels. Man, you ain't lying, TJ. Don't get me wrong, Bret Hart was a good wrestler, but he whines and bitch and complain. My goodness, Jerry. Like, seriously. Like, man, what made me be back on my soapbox about Bret Hart is when I was watching, and some of you probably, if you checked out the TJ Knows Wrestling podcast, you probably heard me talk about it on the last episode. But it was when Bret Hart was on a documentary for Yokozuna. And he was talking about WrestleMania 9. And WrestleMania 9, the main event was Bret Hart versus Yokozuna, right? Bret Hart loses to Yokozuna because Mr. Fuji throws powder into his face. Yokozuna covers him. Hulk Hogan comes out, and right after the match, and probably less than a minute, ends up beating Yokozuna for the WWF Championship. And Bret Hart to this day, keep in mind, it's happened in 93. What are we, 2021? So what are we looking at here? Damn near 30 years, right? Well, about 27 years, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know, man. But anyway, close to 30 years. And this dude still up there talking about Hulk Hogan on a documentary that belongs to Yokozuna. And not to mention, in his book, he's criticizing Yokozuna and talking about he resents Yokozuna for cutting a match short. And he's like, it was my opportunity to show what I have. Like, dude, you was going to lose the match. Like, it's not about you. Like, Yokozuna was going to win the match. But he up here talking about he resent Yokozuna for cutting the match short. Dude, you was going to lose. Like, and then on top of that, he loses to Yokozuna Hulk Hogan ended up getting the championship, right? So he's mad at Hulk Hogan. But if Vince wanted to be a jerk, if Hulk Hogan wanted to be a jerk, when Hulk Hogan go to Vince and be like, okay, I'm going to come out there and I'm going to challenge Bret Hart and I'm going to win a championship. They made it for you to lose to Yokozuna in a backhanded way to protect you. And they made an emerging super heel in Yokozuna lose to Hulk Hogan. And yet you sitting up here complaining and whining and boo-hooing like the world just did you something wrong. If anybody needs to be mad at Yokozuna, that was Yokozuna's first championship. And this man loses in less than a minute. And you sitting up here crying and boo-hooing and all that other crap about losing your championship. Like, Bret the Hitman Hart to me is one of the most bitter, sad individuals I've ever seen in my entire life. Like, if you look at Bret the Hitman Hart, like I seen him on a documentary, he looks much better these days. But he just looks like a guy that is just like, I fail to believe that Bret the Hitman Hart is just aging based on just him just getting older. It just seems like his bitterness and ability to hold grudges, like that is what's making him old. And I feel so bad, man, because I respect Bret the Hitman Hart so freaking much, man. Like, I'm talking about his in-ring work. But just watching this guy, like, boo-hooing and just act like a straight-up pussy. I hate to call it that, but it's a fact. Like, it just completely, like, kills his legacy, in my opinion. TJ, I follow you on the State of the Saints podcast. I love wrestling. So glad you're a fan too. Mike, I appreciate it, man. Like I say, man, we just talk wrestling here. We focus on the wrestling tonight. We're talking about Owen Hart. Now I'm just basically answering and commenting on what you all have to say. But, you know, I mean, it's just, I don't know, man. I feel so bad, man. Big Papa Pump, Scott Steiner, my all-time favorite dude was host. Big Papa Pump is the hookup. Holla if you hear me. Bret buried the British Bulldog in their legendary SummerSlam 92 match. Thank you, Mike. And that's another thing. Anything that happens that goes wrong in the world of professional wrestling in a match with Bret Hart is always the other guy's fault. I have yet to see Bret the Hitman Hart take any responsibility for any match, for a botch, for a hiccup of any kind. I have yet to see this dude say, you know what, man, I was wrong for that. That was my mistake. I mean, basically just said that British Bulldog was out all night snorting dope. Even though if that's the case, right? Even if that's the case, why put this man out there like that? Why tell the whole world, like this is your brother-in-law? Why tell the world that this man is out here snorting that coke? Excuse me. Like there's just certain things you have to keep to yourself. Like Yokozuna was supposed to win a championship, and you sitting up here talking about you resent Yokozuna for winning. I mean, you know what I'm saying? For phoning it in, dude, you was gonna lose. If anything, it would have made him look bad, not you. I don't know. Do you like Ted DiBiase? Yes, absolutely. Ted DiBiase, great gimmick, $1 million man. Wish he would have had the championship. He's definitely falls in that category of one of the best wrestlers to never win a championship. Now, I know he ended up getting the championship because Andre the Giant ended up beating Hulk Hogan, and he ended up buying a championship from Andre the Giant, but he didn't keep it long because Jack Tunney ended up having like a tournament, and Macho Man ended up winning the WWF Championship at WrestleMania 4. So wish he would have had a lengthy title run. He deserved it. ECW One Night Stand to this day is my favorite pay-per-view of all time, the best matches. Yeah, it was a good pay-per-view, the first one. The other one's terrible. Yeah, that first one was real good. To be fair, Bret doesn't get his credit. Everyone only talks about Shawn. Well, that's because of him. That's because of him, Opie. Man, that's because of him. Like, think about this. If you look at any documentary, any interview that Bret Hart does, you start talking about the Montreal Screwjob. Any interview that he does, he can talk about his match with Mr. Perfect for about 5 minutes. Ric Flair, 5 minutes. His first King of the Ring run when he beat Bam Bam Bigelow and crew, about 5 minutes. Montreal Screwjob, if the interview is an hour, he talking about it at least 50 minutes, 45 minutes. It's his fault. Like, it is his fault that people don't recognize him as a 5-time WWF champion. When you talk about Shawn Michaels will talk about the Montreal Screwjob, but he'll then start talking about his comeback, his injury against The Undertaker, match versus Chris Jericho, his WrestleMania matches versus The Undertaker, his WrestleMania matches versus John Cena. Like, he talks about that, he expounds and goes further than the Montreal Screwjob. Bret Hart's career died in November of 1997. Period. It is his fault. It is his fault that he's not recognized as the champion the way that he is. Because it's forever. Anytime the Montreal Screwjob comes around, here come Bret the Hitman Hart sitting up there wanting to cry and boo-hoo and tell everybody what happened. God, yo, we have broke this thing down so many times. We have broke down the Montreal Screwjob so many doggone times, man. We have dissected it. I mean, honestly, man, that frog's guts is over here. His heart is over here. His legs over here. How many times do we have to dissect this? He makes people forget about how great he was as a champion. He makes people forget about some of his legendary matches because he's so hell-bent on the hatred for Vince McMahon for doing that to him, Eric Bischoff for life outside of WWF, and Shawn Michaels because Shawn Michaels has transitioned as a person, but he still wants people to believe that Shawn Michaels is that same person. Move the hell on. Dude, you just did an interview with white hair looking like Raiden on a Mortal Kombat movie. And you still up here talking about when you had brunette hair, long hair that wasn't thinning, coming out to 1993 version of the Bret the Hitman Hart theme song. And you still holding on to grudges to this day. Let it go. It's his fault, man. Opie, it's his fault that nobody is giving him his credit. It's his fault. Like, talk about the Montreal Screwjob because it's a part of your history, but don't dwell on it and be spending the majority of your interview talking about it. That's why people don't have an appreciation for him as a champion these days, because that's all he know. Screwjob. Like, you ask somebody, ask how many times Bret the Hitman Hart was a champion. They probably couldn't tell you. Ask them, excuse me, ask them who did Bret Hart beat for the championship. They couldn't tell you. Because the Montreal Screwjob overshadows everything because he allowed it to. Does the Montreal Screwjob overshadow? I'll put it to you like this. Does the Montreal Screwjob overshadow Shawn Michaels' career? Can you talk about Shawn Michaels' career beyond the Montreal Screwjob? Can you talk about Shawn Michaels before the Montreal Screwjob? Why? Because Shawn Michaels allows people to know and recognize and appreciate what he did outside of that moment. Hey, TJ, why did Finn Balor go back to NXT? Because that was the best play for him. WWF main roster wasn't going to do anything with him, so it was the best. It was the best play for him. Even I'm sick of Bret bringing me into the conversation all the time. The Montreal Screwjob. And Screwjob. Yeah, man. Eric Bischoff is the greatest general manager of all time. Yeah, him and Teddy Long. Bret should have dropped the belt on Montreal. Yeah, he should have dropped it. And that's another thing. You know, I'm a Canadian hero. Like, dude, this isn't real. This ain't real. Like, who cares? Like, he like, man, I want to lose. First off, you're not from Montreal, right? You know what I'm saying? You're not from Montreal. You're from Calgary, right? So, I mean, that's not even the same place. That's equivalent to somebody saying, okay, I'm from New Orleans, right? And I'm a wrestling champion. And I say, and we in, I don't know, Seattle. And I'm like, I don't want to lose in Seattle because I'm an American hero. Huh? What? Like, come on, man. Bret the Hitman Hart, when it comes down to it, like, he was jealous of Shawn Michaels. You know what I'm saying? He was jealous of Shawn Michaels. Shawn Michaels was jealous of him. Call a spade a spade. He was jealous because Shawn was younger, better looking, more charismatic. People were starting to gravitate to him. You know, it's almost like if you watch that movie about Liberace, you know what I'm saying? Like, in Liberace, you know what I'm saying? He lived a homosexual lifestyle. He had this young boyfriend, right? You know what I'm saying? And all of a sudden, you know what I'm saying? He started, like, the young boyfriend started to get older, and he started to want to holler at somebody a little younger. You know what I'm saying? That's Vince McMahon. Not that I'm trying to say Vince McMahon is, you know what I'm saying, a homosexual or whatever like that. And nothing against homosexuals. That was just something that I was just thinking about because I did feel like it fits this moment. But, you know, I mean, Shawn Michaels had it all. You know what I'm saying? And Bret didn't want to accept it. Bret was the old lady, you know what I'm saying, the old chick at the burlesque house, and the guy that's over the burlesque house, you know what I'm saying, falling in love with the 18-year-old, and you've been in a burlesque house and you're in your 40s. That's all it is. That's all it is. I was mad when Bret Hart beat Diesel at the 95 Survivor Series. I love Diesel run. Diesel was overachieving WWF. He was big, he was tall, he was a nice looking guy, right up Vince McMahon alley, but limited at best. The Montreal Screwjob also says, I live rent-free in Bret head, to say the least. Because Shawn stayed in WWF, Mick Foley was a great commissioner GM in the 2000s. Yeah, that was pretty funny. CM Punk says, I'm a much better whiner than Bret. I don't know about that, okay? I don't know about that. I don't know about that. Bret Hart may be the winner. Dustin Period put Louisiana on his back against Conor McGregor. Yeah, he definitely did. He definitely did. But Conor McGregor, that man don't care nothing about no fighting no more. Like, honestly, man, when you get a big payday like that against Mayweather, like, you just in there because of nostalgia and you can get a little bit of bread. That's it. Josh says, I always saw Finn as a Conor ripoff. Well, because they both Irish. Nah, Finn Balor is well, you have to have an appreciation for when he was Prince Devitt. You know what I'm saying? Like, when he was Prince Devitt, you know what I'm saying? That's when he was doing his best work. These days, I mean, I don't know, man. Watered down. When will WWE bring back Ken Shamrock? Ken Shamrock need to stay where he at. He did some good work when he was in WWF, but his best days are behind him. And we're gonna finish it up with Mike says CM was mad overrated to me. Yeah, I think he was one of those guys, like I said, that went on social media and bought everything people saying. Yeah, I should be champion. Yeah, man, I should be better than what people like. Knock it off. But thank you all so much for being a part of the TJ Knows Wrestling podcast. And for those that are part of the State of the Saints podcast coming over, thank you all so much, man. And make sure that you'll subscribe to the YouTube channel, youtube.com, search TJ Knows Wrestling podcast. So we talk about wrestling every single Friday. We put out a new episode. And thank you all so much for helping this channel. And hopefully we can grow and have success just like we do on the State of the Saints podcast. The State of the Game podcast, the sports podcast, is also growing as well. So thank you all so much. And Facebook.com, search TJ Knows Wrestling is available as well. You all have a good, productive morning, noon, night, and I'll see you down the road.